Special thanks to Horizon Therapeutics for sponsoring today's Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Working tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics' mission at horizontherapeutics.com.
I just want to really encourage your male listeners to realize how much influence they have to be part of the change that our planet, our women, our people of other races need us, especially us white guys, and to recognize the advantages that we have and the opportunity to make conscious choice to do good.
That's Ray Arata. Ray is the co-founder of the Better Man movement, empowering fathers and helping them to achieve health and happiness. We'll hear all about Ray and his extraordinary life's work on this Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. Say hello to David Hirsch.
Hi, and thanks for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, Fathers Mentoring Fathers of Children with Special Needs, presented by the Special Fathers Network.
The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for dads to support dads. To find out more, go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we'd be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad.
And now let's listen in on this conversation between Ray Arata and David Hirsch.
I'm thrilled to be talking today with Ray Arata of Fairfax, California, who's a father of 3 and co-founder of the Better Man movement. Ray, thank you for taking the time to do a podcast interview for the Special Fathers Network.
You're welcome.
You and your former wife are the proud parents of 3 adult children. Let's start with some background. Where did you grow up? Tell me something about your family.
I grew up in San Francisco. I'm a 5th generation native San Franciscan on my father's side. And on my mother's side, my Italian Calabrese grandmother came over on a donkey down to a boat to Ellis Island to San Jose, California.
Oh my gosh. There's probably not that many people in San Francisco that can say that they have the roots that you and your family do.
Oh, yeah.
And it didn't have anything to do with gold mining.
No, but I've got that covered too, because on my current wife's side, her grandfather came from Italy and was a gold miner up in Nevada City, which is northeast of San Francisco, before he immigrated to San Francisco. We got those bases covered, Dave.
Got it. So what I remember from our prior conversations is that they're the oldest of 3. And I'm wondering, how did that play out?
Because I was named after my father, that in and of itself had me live for a long time in the question that I wasn't conscious to was Ray who? Because there was Ray Jr., my father, who went to Cal and played football and was a judge and went to Hastings Law School. And Ray Sr. was my grandfather, who played baseball and basketball, went to St. Mary's, was a judge and an attorney. And so I sat in that question for quite some time. But as it pertained to my siblings, I have a younger brother and a sister, and everyone wondered, where did this height come from? Because I was 6'4". And so my brother used to always watch me at the dinner table and try to eat as much as I did, thinking he would get as big as me, and it didn't work.
So if I can paraphrase, you were growing up in a rather big shadow.
Yes. Yeah.
Behind your grandfather as well as your dad, who were both judges, right? So revered, not just lawyers, but revered men in the legal community.
Yeah.
How would you describe your relationship with your dad?
So my relationship with my dad is a very good one. He's still alive. And my dad is an athlete. He is a very smart man. He's a very principled man. He's a Republican. He loves his wine. He loves food. And, he's a very pale-skinned. He has some Northern Italian in him, and he's German and Irish. And that's what attracted him to my mother, who's 100% Italian and darker skinned. And so my dad loves to live life, and at 85 years old next month, he plans to live to 100. He just grew, in COVID, he grew a goatee. I mean, I just hopefully that the last time he had one of those was 37, when he was 37, which is almost 50 years ago when he was a judge.
That's wild. So were there any important takeaways when you think back about your relationship, which still exists, that you've said, oh, this is the biggest influence my dad's been on me as a man, as a father?
Yeah, there is one. And ironically enough, and we may talk about this later, in my book, Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up, I talk about fatherly influences. And there's influences that we watch that influence us, that we either emulate or reject. But with all that said, as a plug for later, probably the biggest thing that he instilled upon me was that he chose to live his life for the people, to be a servant. And what I mean by that is he was a high-flying, on his way to being a very successful attorney. And this is the story as it was told to me. And he got in a severe car accident, and his head went through the windshield. He almost died. And according to him, that was these are my words, paraphrasing, a wake-up call of sorts that had him decide, you know what, I want to serve the people. So he let go of the money and went into public service. It didn't occur to me until I was several years into what I was doing. I'm like, oh, I'm following in his footsteps. And, you didn't ask a question about my mother, but, she was volunteering her time for the Janet Pomeroy Center for people with special needs. So both of them were modeling that for me.
Yeah, well, they sound like two extraordinary role models, and you're very fortunate. The work that we're doing was really birthed out of the fact that there's so many individuals, young men, women, growing up in father-absent homes, and all the crazy stuff that goes around as a result of that. So thanks for sharing. You talked a little bit about your dad's dad, the other lawyer, the other judge, and I'm wondering what influence your grandfather, Arata, as well as your maternal grandfathers had on your life.
So my grandfather, it's interesting that your audience may have had this experience. A father can be hard on a son, but when the grandson comes around, all that goes out the window. so my grandfather had a 1969 Mustang, and I just had the balls to ask him, hey, Grandpa, can I borrow your car? Can I drive it? And he said yes. He had this uncanny relationship with me, a softer relationship with me. But my grandfather was very principled, and he always encouraged me to do well in school. And he died when I was a freshman in college, and he just was happy to see me. It was weird, but that's what I remember.
Can I interpret that by your comments that your grandfather was probably a little bit harder on your dad than he was on you?
Yeah, or a little less emotionally available.
Okay.
My dad would say, my dad didn't really have those kinds of conversations with me. And I'm clear now, because of the depth of conversation and the relationship I have with my father, that what my father and I have, he didn't have with his dad.
Interesting. Your maternal grandfather, any role?
My maternal grandfather came from Sicily, and he was the working man. He was the I'll fix it. He was the, and I'm the quintessential reluctant handyman. I've graduated from the unhandyman to the reluctant handyman, but he was salt to the earth, and very principled guy just as well. And his name was Sando, but everyone called him Sal. And he was also an amazing poker player. At the family reunion picnics on Sunday, all the Italians would gather around and play poker. And as soon as I was able to have my own money, they'd let me play because they'd take my money.
That's wild. Along the way, you got a JD. And I'm wondering, what were you thinking? Were you going to follow in your dad and grandfather's footsteps?
So the tongue-in-cheek answer is I wasn't. I only know now, looking back, that in 1987, early to mid 87, I was bartending at two of the most famous bars in San Francisco, Harry's Bar and the Balboa Cafe. And a friend of mine was living in New York, and he said, "You should come out here. I know this guy." And he introduced me to a guy who was working at Bear Stearns. And so I dropped everything because a little voice in my head said, it's time to get serious. Stop messing around. Even though I was having the time of my life, making a bunch of money, meeting a lot of girls, everything you're supposed to do at 23 or 24. So I say goodbye to the girlfriend. I say goodbye to the family. I get on the plane. I land. I go to curbside, and the limo from Bear Stearns that's supposed to pick me up never shows up. It was October 19th, 1987, Black Monday. My whole reason to go out there vanished. So I made a go of it for about 4 months, worked on the floor as a $2 broker, temped at E.F. Hutton, bartended at the Cadillac Bar. And then I'm like, the hell with this. I'm going back home. And on the way home, Legal Eagles, the movie, was on the plane. And I'm watching it. And I'm like, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to make this big announcement when at the dinner table at Thanksgiving, I'm going to go to law school or whenever it was. Probably because it kind of made sense and partly for father approval, I went to law school.
And you did not use your law degree?
Nope. As a matter of fact, in my senior year of law school, because my existence was go to night law school, get out at 9, bartend till 2, train on my bike during the day and study, lather, rinse, repeat. And so when I got the mother of my 3 children, when I got her pregnant, all of a sudden life just went, you have to get a job. And then I was like, but I don't want to be a lawyer. I would go to all the schools and I didn't like any of the job listings. And someone said, hey, remember when you went to New York to work in the financial industry? Why don't you revisit that? So to make a long story shorter, I interviewed at Montgomery Securities to consider an institutional path. They wanted an MBA. They didn't care if I had a JD. I'm so glad they didn't hire me. Or Prudential Securities. And Prudential Securities had my dad's best friend, who was also another mentor, who died a week ago, by the way. He said, Ray, when you come to the retail side, when you get a client, it's your client. And I'm like, I like that. So from day one, all my sweat equity that I invest is mine. And I went into the financial services industry, and within 6 months, against my manager's protestations, I said, I want to go into the 401k business, because aren't you all telling me that this is an asset gathering game? And if I can get an HR lead at a company to say yes to send 1,000 people's money, and I landed a big one, and then Silicon Valley. So that's kind of what kind of the course I took instead of being an attorney.
Just briefly, I remember you started at Prudential Securities. You were there for a few years, U.S. Bancorp, Piper Jaffray for a handful of years, then RBC Dane for another handful of years. And then you shifted, right? Something happened, and I don't remember what it was, but you did something with Shear Laws, business coach, and then your career sort of took a different turn. So what was it that transpired there?
In 1999, I had what I refer to in my book as a wake-up call. It was really a 1-2 punch. That was when we moved into the brand new house we built, and I got the I don't love you anymore speech from my wife. Didn't know what to do with that. And then 6 weeks later, one of my 2 partners went to another firm. So as you know, Dave, when a guy leaves a firm and goes to another firm in the middle of the night, it's an account grab. So I had to deal with that. And so for 6 months, I was emotionally overwhelmed. There was a betrayal, and my marriage was falling apart. I was invited by my manager in the financial services industry, of all places, to go do a men's weekend. So I did the men's weekend and got a chance to kind of wake up, self-examine, look at how the unhealed, pained little boy in me was driving the bus, and I joined a men's group, and I started going to what I call the emotional gymnasium, working on becoming more aware, basically becoming a healthy masculine man, as opposed to letting the outdated playbook of what it means to be a man to drive my behavior and my language. And so did I get a lot of comments, kumbaya, all that stuff? Of course. But all that told me was other men's discomforts. I don't get that anymore. So I couldn't leave the financial services industry. So one day a magazine came across my desk and it said, Life Planning, Your Money or Your Life. And I looked at this, and there was a guy by the name of George Kinder out of Massachusetts that had created the Kinder Institute of Life Planning. And he was offering a 5-day training. So I went to this training, and they sat me in the chair and they life planned me. And so for brokers or financial advisors who were moving away from commission and looking to be more advisory, his whole shtick was, if you get interested and are able to evoke your client's life ambitions and you help them do that by your financial ability, you'll have a client for life. And the only way that he could prove that to us is by putting us in the chair. So next thing I know, I'm leading these trainings. I'm his golden son for a while. And I'm going to Holland. I'm doing these trainings. I'm coaching financial advisors. And then I did a money coaching training. And in the money coaching training in 2006, she says, why are you still in the financial services industry? I think it's about time for you to leave. And my dear friend, Deborah Price, who wrote a book called Money Magic, great book, kicked me in the butt, and I left and I went to a business coaching company called SureLoss. That was in 2007. So that's, we're in 2021. So I've been in a 14-year career transition. That's one way to look at it.
Well, I sort of look back on it as a pivot, right? You went from what I'd call the for-profit business, working in financial services, switching gears to going into coaching, and then doing what you have been doing. So
after I started coaching, several years later, I was invited, that's being nice, challenged to write a book about all the men's work that I had been doing. So I write the book, and somehow I meet a diversity and inclusion consultant who says to me, Ray, you really have something here. You need to go talk to the men, but I want you to go to a women's leadership event or two and just listen. So I went to these, and I was like the only guy there. And I had another wake-up call of sorts, in that I thought about my mom and all the complaints she ever had about being second born in an Italian family, and how her brother got a lot and she didn't. That was cultural. I thought about my wife, oldest in an Italian family, but the youngest brother was running the business. And then I thought about my daughter, who was going to be graduating with a degree in computer science from Duke. And I'm like, okay, I could keep doing this men's work and lead these men's weekends, or I can walk across the street metaphorically into life and go talk to leaders. And I think what needs to happen, after I had talked at several women's conferences, panels, I said, somebody needs to put some attention and intention on the men. Somebody. And I realized that somebody's me. So I reached out to several men I knew, quasi-woke men at Price Waterhouse and Genentech and other firms. And I said, I've got this idea that I want to bring healthy masculinity as a cornerstone. It's the inside job stuff to the leadership conversation, to the equality conversation. And I want to do this conference. And they're like, sounds good. And boom, in 2016, 150 people, Kaiser Permanente, Genentech, Price Waterhouse, all these companies, threw some money at it. And it was nothing short of amazing. So here we are. So that was the conference. And I was starting a movement of basically calling men forward, calling companies forward, that if you want to create true inclusion and belonging so that everyone besides the majority, men, feels safe and can contribute, then you need to do the tap on the shoulder to men without shaming or blaming them, saying, hey, you've been operating with some blinders, an old playbook of what it means to be a man, privileged, but don't resist the temptation to be triggered by that word privilege, because it doesn't mean anything's wrong with you, and seek to become aware, seek to become a better leader. And here's how. So that was the movement. And so this year is going to be chock full, and a bunch of companies are coming on board for us to do programs for their men.
The Better Man Project, or Better Man Movement, which I recall you started, co-founded in 2015.
Yeah.
What is that, and how has that transpired?
So the scope of the conference is to meet men where they are, to support them in becoming more aware, inclusionary leaders and allies, to be supportive. And so one of the things about me that's important to me is heart. And I don't know about you, Dave, but growing up, there weren't very many male figures that modeled emotional literacy, showed and made sadness or fear or even shame or loss okay. And so what most men do is they stuff those emotions, and they let the a lot of human beings do this, they let the emotions run the show. And so I'm a big believer in, I created the heart-based leadership principles of emotional literacy, vulnerability, authenticity, accountability, inclusivity, and love. And so I really seek to bring these human characteristics that are inherently attainable by both men and women, so that men become better leaders, so that they can respect, see, push, promote, protect women, people of other marginalized groups. And so when we start talking about this in a conference, what I often hear is, Ray, you've created an amazing safe space for people to get real. The women say, I had no idea that men felt this or would talk like this. And there are men of all shapes and sizes, right? And so I know from all the men's work, you know, when I go first and I'm vulnerable and I share and I say all this stuff, guys will come up to me and they'll look around to see if their buddies are looking, and they're like, hey, what you said, can you tell me just a little bit more about that? I used to get that a lot. So now I'm just out with it and encouraging more men, especially men in our age group. You know, the younger guys, I think it's just an evolving DNA thing, but they're looking at our generation going, you know what, that whole stoic play doesn't work for them. Doesn't work in my relationships, doesn't work at work. So that's the intention, to create the space to wake them up just a little bit, to get them inspired and encouraged and feeling down here, so that when they go back into their companies, they'll tell another guy, they'll talk to the diversity and inclusion people saying, hey, can we get some training in here?
So let's take a step back, because the first conference in 2016 was what sort of catalyzed things. That's what I heard you say.
Yeah.
You've done these conferences annually. They've grown. Give our listeners just a quick flyby on what the content, the scope of the conference is.
Yeah. So thank you for the question. So as a reminder, it was the work I was doing in non-corporate that had me distill to have the same sets of conversations in work. So one of the things I know about men is, you know, we fix, but even this notion of fix is something that was learned. And so my invitation for your listeners, especially the fathers with special needs, is when you learn and then learn to live with children with special needs, there's definite loss around that, grief. And what I can tell you is men don't get taught how to be with grief. So I talk about unscrewing the lid and allowing some of it to come through. It's not going to kill you. It's an emotion that's in your body that if you don't allow it to be experienced, it's going to build up. And then next thing you know, grief can come out in the form of anger. So that's the first thing. The second thing is challenge your innate or learned desire to fix and ask yourself, am I trying to fix the situation to make me feel better, which is really just a rescue of yourself? Or maybe I should just be with how I'm feeling and then seek to be supportive from my heart for this human being, which I trust many of your listeners somehow in some way, shape, or form have got there. But I'm a big believer in, self-examine, slow the speed dial down, get interested in what's going on for you, allow it, and instead of coming from your head, come from your heart.
I love the work that you're doing. It's transformative. That's what I heard you say. And I think it ties in, if not directly, indirectly to the work that we're doing with dads raising kids with special needs.
Yeah.
It's very isolating. Guys don't know how to deal with the emotions that they have. Once they get the news, whether it's at the time of birth or it's something that's diagnosed years down the road, that your child has developmental delays or that there's challenges, right, that are not meant to be fixed. Remember, men are fixers. So that's our first inclination is, how can I fix this?
Yeah.
And when you come to the conclusion that autism and cerebral palsy and Down syndrome, rare disease, is not meant to be fixed, you're in no man's land, and you're get untethered from, where you anticipated being, and it's confusing. And I think that what you're talking about, the work that you're doing, mostly in leadership circles, right, in business circles, right, to be more inclusive and get guys in touch with what's going on internally and then around them, is relevant to the work that we're doing. And I'm wondering if there's a thought or anything that you can share from this experience you've had with the Better Man movement to offer to our dads raising kids with special needs.
The one thing I would add is this kind of work, and especially for your listeners with kids with special needs, is not something you do alone. So self-isolating is exactly the wrong thing. Dare I say, be a real man and ask for help, right? And surrender school or acceptance school can be as long and drawn out as you want, and that's correlation to your own stubbornness, or it can be shorter and you can ask for help.
Yeah, words of wisdom. And those that have gotten to the acceptance phase, whether it was quickly and efficiently or a very circuitous route with a lot of bumps and bruises along the road, seem to be in a better place, that they're more balanced. Mm-hmm. They're satisfied with where they're at and how life has evolved. They're not continuing to mourn the loss of the life that they anticipated for themselves or the life that they anticipated with their child or children. Mm-hmm. It's a slippery slope, right? And I really feel for families, dads in particular, who are struggling. And I'm hoping that just this conversation and some of the insights that you're sharing will help connect some of the dots so it's not as challenging, and they'll be another resource.
So when I did my men's weekend in 1999, what started to happen over the years was I'd get asked to have lots of cups of coffee with lots of men and women would say, could you talk to this guy? And sure, I had all these conversations, and then like a year later, I started getting these things. They say to me, I'll never forget what you said, Ray. And I'm like, what did I say? And so people were seeing my gift and why I was on the planet ahead of me. And so in 2000, it was the men's work thing was a side thing for me until 2011 when a man said, Ray, you're playing a 1-to-1 game and you're destined to play a 1-to-many. I'll never forget when he said that. And he challenged me to write a book because I'd been thinking about it. And one day I was on a run with a buddy of mine that I shouldn't have been doing because I had a hip replacement. I was kind of run walking, but I was doing it. And I was out in a clearing. It was nice, smooth dirt. And there was this little smooth rock. And I was running and boom, I landed on that rock. I broke my 5th metatarsal. And the doctor said, you can't swim, you can't bike, you can't do anything for like 8 weeks. And the day after, I had already been trained to look for the silver lining. I'm like, I'm going to write the book. So with that, I wrote the book, which I now know because I'm writing my next book, a series of life experiences. And what I had been doing, there was order and disorder. And so the book for me was a chance for me to get the disorder and order out orderly to support men who weren't ready to do a men's weekend, men who weren't ready to join a men's group. But what I will tell you is most men, most humans wait for some pain to motivate them. Most men won't do a men's weekend or join a men's group until they've created a wake of disaster around them, whether it's a divorce, job loss, isolation, whatever the case may be. And they finally raise the white flag saying, what do I do? I can't tell you how many men came to me under those circumstances. So that's why writing the book, a lot of people will tell you when they write a book, some write for it, so it's a calling card, some write because they think they want to make money, and some write because the book just needs to come out. That was me, right? So unbeknownst to me, in the eyes of several professional women, it made me a man expert. So whatever, the man whisperer,
I'm wondering, just thinking aloud, if this would be the type of book that you would give to your son or son-in-law, so that he's not going to wait until he's in a crisis, and be more well-prepared. And I guess another way of asking the question is, do you attract a lot of sort of next generation men who maybe aren't married or recently married? They've got their life ahead of them. And I'm wondering what role this work has played.
So there's two groups of men that would buy the book, which, by the way, if you type in Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up on Amazon, it'll come up. So the two people that will buy the book are men who are in some form of discourse looking for guidance on how to right the ship, how to find more peace, find more intimacy in their life, better relationships, being a better father, being a better husband, being a better leader. They have a state of readiness that potentially, because of their pain, they're willing to look inside because they're part of the problem, which means they can be part of the solution, right? So that's the most likely person to buy the book. The other men might not need big pain as an indicator, but there's some questions that have been mulling around. They've heard some things from the women or partners in their life, and maybe their father died or their kids are saying something to them, and they just kind of know that if they really thought about it, their playbook of what it means to be a man isn't really serving them that well. So the book is written by a man, me, for men, and it's sequential, meaning that there's steps that I take them through in the first part of the book. And in the second part of the book, there's deep dive chapters like real male friendships, navigating conscious divorce, if that's what you're going through, what that could look like, being a better father, better husband, things of that nature, a masculine leader, all the stuff that I went through that I wrote about. There's growth plans at the end of each chapter. And it's not a sit down, one read. It's this is what's going on in my life right now, or I'm amidst a wake up call. What do I do? What do I not do? So it's a timeless book. There's steps that I take them through in the first part of the book. And in the second part of the book, there's deep dive chapters like real male friendships, navigating conscious divorce, if that's what you're going through, what that could look like, being a better father, better husband, things of that nature, a masculine leader, all the stuff that I went through that I wrote about. There's growth plans at the end of each chapter. And it's not a sit down, one read. It's this is what's going on in my life right now, or I'm amidst a wake up call. What do I do? What do I not do? So it's a timeless book.
Yeah, well, words of wisdom. Thank you. So you mentioned that the book was what prompted you to go into the work that you're doing with the Better Man movement. So let's go back and talk a little bit about the book, the title of which is Wake Up, Man Up, Step Up, Transforming Your Wake-Up Call into Emotional Health and Happiness. That's a mouthful. What is it that motivated you to write the book? How has that transpired?
Well, two things. At the end of the book, there's a chapter called Note to Women about here are the perils and the ways that if you're going to give a book to a man, the message that it might be sending. So I'm cautionary because unless you do this right, if you were to give a book to a young man, the message could be wrong. The decision I made a long time ago with my daughter is, and this is non-negotiable, any man that you marry must do the men's weekend. Your brothers did the weekend. So her boyfriend did the men's weekend and I was the leader on the weekend. So there was no discussion. So it's a one instance of being a father that in seeking to protect and make your daughters safe, giving them the book saying, nod, nod, wink, wink, you're going to read this book if you want my daughter's hand. And all I'm doing is asking you to read a book to become more aware, to be more safe for my daughter. So that's how I would handle that particular instance. Now, as to whether younger men have attracted or come to me all the time. Now, I made a decision to focus on the influences of younger men, the fathers, because they're the ones that need the work. Because if they don't do the work, they keep on unconsciously wounding their kids, setting up their kids to follow in the same path. So what ends up happening, this may sound a little weird to your listeners, but I talk to the young men inside the older men because they need to emotionally grow up so that they're in alignment. So I know how to talk to the younger men. So it's just and then I'm aware that they're projecting on me father figures. So I try and dismantle that and just speak to them probably like their fathers don't speak to them.
I'm sort of curious to know, why is it that you've agreed to be a mentor as part of the Special Fathers Network?
It's part of my fabric of why I'm on the planet. It's not hard, and I know that the world needs men like me to show other men how. I call it going first, but I went a long time ago, so I'm still going. And so it's part of my mission to change the planet. If I got to go first and show you how, and that like dropping a pebble in a pond, it's like the ripple goes outward, right? If I can support another man to start a ripple, then I'm in my mission.
That's fabulous. We're thrilled to have you. I'm sort of curious to know what role spirituality has played.
Every morning I meditate. Every morning I pray to God. Every morning I express gratitude. So it's very much a part of my life, especially in my men's work. When I recognize I have this God-given ability to listen in support of another's healing, I'm a healer, but only because of him. So, it's not me. And it is me, but, I have to have that understanding.
Well, thanks for sharing. Very insightful. Let's give a special shout out to Jack Myers for helping connect us.
Yes. Jack's a great guy. I met him and ended up having him keynote a couple years ago for my New York Better Man conference on the 40th floor of the Hearst building. I'll never forget it. And he's been a good friend ever since.
Yep. An amazing individual himself. So is there anything else you'd like to say before we wrap up?
Anything else I'd like to say? I just want to really encourage your male listeners to realize how much influence they have to be part of the change that our planet, our women, our people of other races need us, especially us white guys, and to recognize the advantages that we have and the opportunity to make conscious choice to do good. Yeah. I need your help there. Yeah, I need your help.
If somebody wants to learn about the Better Man movement, contact you, what's the best way to do that? Just
go to www.bettermanconference.com and you can sign up for our newsletter because we send out blogs, we inform, we let you know of our events. It'll be the way that I'll communicate to you for my book that's coming out in the fall. Yeah, that's the best way.
Excellent. Ray, thank you for your time and many insights. As a reminder, Ray is just one of the dads who's part of the Special Fathers Network, a mentoring program for fathers raising a child with special needs. If you'd like to be a mentor father or are seeking advice from a mentor father with a similar situation to your own, please go to 21stcenturydads.org. Thank you for listening to the latest episode of the Special Fathers Network Dad to Dad podcast. I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. As you probably know, the 21st Century Dads Foundation is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization, which means we need your help to keep our content free to all concerned. Would you please consider making a tax-deductible contribution? I would really appreciate your support. Ray, thanks again.
You're welcome, Dave.
And thank you for listening to the Dad to Dad podcast, presented by the Special Fathers Network. The Special Fathers Network is a dad-to-dad mentoring program for fathers raising children with special needs. Through our personalized matching process, new fathers with special needs children connect with mentor fathers in a similar situation. It's a great way for fathers to support fathers. Go to 21stcenturydads.org.
And if you're a dad looking for help or would like to offer help, we would be honored to have you join our closed Facebook group. Please go to facebook.com/groups and search Dad to Dad. Also, please be sure to register for the Special Fathers Network bi-weekly Zoom calls held on the first and third Tuesdays of every month. Lastly, we're always looking to share interesting stories. If you'd like to share your story or know of a compelling story, please send an email to david@21stcenturydads.org.
The Dad to Dad podcast was produced by Couch Audio for the Special Fathers Network. Thanks again to Horizon Therapeutics, who believe that science and compassion must work together to transform lives. That's why they work tirelessly to research, develop, and bring forward medicines for people living with rare and rheumatic diseases. Discover more about Horizon Therapeutics at horizontherapeutics.com.